Hello everybody, and welcome to the first meeting of Resources Scrutiny Committee of the year. This is a meeting of the Council held in public, it's not a public meeting. There is no fire drill planned, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave by the exit nearest to the large screen at the front of the room and proceed to the fire exit in the courtyard. Once it is safe to return, councillors will receive a text message. Officers will also be advised when it's safe to return to the meeting. We're recording this meeting this evening using our webcasting service system. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the council's website following the meeting. Welcome everybody. First item is apologies for absence.
We've had apologies from Councillor Brockman and Councillor Turner.
Thank you. And then item 2, declarations of interest. No, that's no declarations of interest. So we'll move on to item 3, budget monitoring report Q1 2024-25. Mr. Sparks.
Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out financial forecast as at Q1, period 3 for this year, and that's for the General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account. The General Fund shows a forecast overspend of 1.6 million, which largely relates to environment and leisure services. A detailed breakdown of all the variances is included in the report from page 8. The HRA forecast an overspend of 1.4 million, which is largely due to property assets and development services. Again, more details included in the report from page 13. Officers are exploring ways to minimise the pressures as far as possible and find offsetting underspends. Wherever any overspends made at year end will need to be funded from reserves. An updated position on the financial forecast reported to members at the November committee meeting, which will be the Q2 period 6 position. So we'll have an update then of the progress in managing those overspends.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any members have any questions or comments? No, I've just got a few. Obviously, the big standout thing from this report is the £1.6 million overspend, and the vast majority of that is through the refuse collection and recycling. So, I mean, in the report on page 9, it states that the overspend there is largely due to needing more crews to meet the service levels than previously anticipated. Perhaps a question for the assistant director. What was the what was the service levels that were previously anticipated, and sort of why were they lower than what was actually found in the end?
Thank you, Councillor. So a large proportion of that overspend is related to some additional recycling crews following the changes to recycling collections in November last year. Participation levels have been higher than they were initially modelled. More people put their bags out every week. That means that there are more crews. The collections are slightly slower than anticipated as well from the collection side, and because they are additional crews, they are spot hired as well. So they are a short-term thing that was put in place whilst the service beds down, and whilst we look at what happens with the service over the medium to long term. And stabilise it, and then we'll see where we're going around, whether that's the correct number and whether they need to be made permanent or not. But hopefully that gives a little bit of an explainer to that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mordecai?
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to that, because one of my friends was an actual agency refuse collector, and I did speak to him about some of the issues and support what you said. One of it was the take-up of it, and the lorries were picking their gross laden rate quite quickly, particularly north of the A127. The deposits were down at Southend, so on some occasions they were having to make 2 trips to get rid of the recycling stuff. That was additional fuel, time spent. So I do support what you say in relation to that. It was the take-up, and it was the fact that the lorries were hitting their gross laden weight very quickly, particularly north of A127.
Yeah, absolutely. And the vehicle costs that are mentioned on page 9 as well, I assume that will be largely sort of the fuel costs of ferrying to and from, and also the changes to the vehicles that were needed to sort of make the new system work with the bins with the bins rather than the sacks.
Thank you, Chairman. So obviously, as you all know from fuel pumps yourself, the price of fuel is high and hasn't fallen back in any significant way for any time being. Refuse collection vehicles are fuel intensive and they do use a lot of fuel. So if they are on the road for longer and working hard, then they do go through that fuel. And if it costs more, then that's ultimately borne out by us. We do have our own fuel supply. We do have our own fuel contract, so we do what we can to mitigate against that. But unfortunately, we don't purchase the volumes needed to get it any cheaper than we currently purchase it. So if we use more fuel, then there is an increased cost for that.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any more comments on the on the waste charge before I move on to a few questions on the HRA that I have? Nobody's indicating. So yeah, just on the sort of the other large area of overspend that I noticed on here was the housing revenue account, and that's largely down to, as the report says on page 12, sort of repairs, and so my main question really is sort of what's the biggest factors around the overspend on repairs? Sort of, is it down to just having more repairs than expected, possibly due to an ageing housing stock, or is it down to sort of issues around Morgan Sindall having to return to properties multiple times to fix a single issue, or things like that? So what's the main driver for that overspend?
I think if you look on page 14, it sets out a little bit more detail. So it relates largely to exclusions from the Morgan Sindall contract that are paid in different ways to the normal contract payment, higher void repairs, and higher costs on some of the planned programme works. So that's a big chunk of the overspend. And there's also some pressures relating to compensation payments for disrepair claims that, again, we're looking at how we can manage that over the longer term. But they're the main areas that make up that repairs overspend.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to allow this meeting to descend too much into sort of the performance of Morgan Sindall, because that's for another scrutiny committee. But sort of, are we seeing that sort of return calls? Because I myself have sort of quite often have a case where a resident would be sort of needing a repair. Morgan Sindall will come, and then the repair's not fully fixed the first time or the second time, and so you get recalls. Is that adding to the total overspend?
The way the contract's structured, obviously that would have obviously a customer satisfaction impact, but we pay a certain amount per property for certain common repairs. So it's like a fixed fee per property, but then there's some exceptions outside. So it's a sort of fixed cost within parameters for normal works, which is set up front as part of the contract, but a cost per every unit in the HRA.
Okay, thank you. Do any members have any more to add for the HRA? No. I just want to, on my final point on this item really is, I want to point out sort of the housing need underspend on page 13, which it isn't something that you see very often. It's always nice to see. There's also an underspend on planning and infrastructure. I mean, my basic question really, without criticising, because it's a good thing, is why is the housing need in particular so underspent so much?
The bulk of that actually relates to staffing costs, particularly around apprenticeships and trainee vacancies. So again, the service is reviewing its needs for apprentices and trainees to take that forward, but there's been some vacancies in that area, which is basically making up the majority of that spend. So it's not a frontline service issue, it's vacancies within staffing that make up most of that.
Okay, so would that mean that we're currently sort of understaffed for apprentices and trainees in that area? Yes, so okay, yeah, maybe that's not as good a point as it initially looked on the paper then. But yeah, I mean, do any other members have anything to add on this particular item? No. In that case, we'll move swiftly on to item 4, which is the procurement pipeline. Mr. Sparks, or sorry, yeah, it would be.
Sorry, I'm just catching up with the flicking through. So this report sets out a forward look of potential procurements over the next 24 months, and in enclosure 1 it sets out a document, the procurement pipeline. This is a live document, it's updated on an ongoing basis. So publication of the procurement pipeline is a requirement of the new Procurement Act for authorities with over £100 million worth of procurement spend. We don't meet that threshold, but we're publishing that really out of best practice. It's got quite a lot of benefits. One is it's a valuable tool for services in their service planning and really working towards those procurements as they come ready and available. It's also for market engagement as well, so we publish that so potential suppliers can see what procurements are upcoming, so it gets our procurement requirements out in the public. And also very important, it gives members sight of future activities, enable them to engage in key projects at an early stage, and that helps them to inform specifications and most appropriate procurement route with the Cabinet member and with officers. As part of this report, it's really inviting members to review the pipeline and highlight relevant procurements they may wish to review in more detail, whether that's through this forum, a working group or other forums that may be appropriate. So really having that wide oversight so members can see what's coming up and really get engaged in some of that early work for key procurements they're interested in undertaking.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have? Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to ask, presumably when each of the contracts with each of these services come up, this will come to this committee for consideration.
Sparks.
So this includes sort of every procurement that is coming up. So a lot of these are quite routine, standard procurements. So what we need to make sure we need to balance off the flexibility and the admin burden of doing these procurements in an effective way that meets efficient timetables most of the time. Some of the bigger contracts, because of their size and nature, will come to Cabinet for decision anyway. They're over £500,000, because obviously that needs a decision at Cabinet to award that contract. So a lot of procurements will come to members due to their size, and also if it's a key decision in the Constitution, if it affects large numbers of ward and policy changes. So a lot of the ones on here are quite small. So things like bar supplies for some of our premises. Again, it's a fairly low contract. It's almost like stock contracts. But the idea of bringing this here is for members to say, are there anyone specifically that members want to be involved in at an early stage? But most of the contracts on here are pretty much business as usual for officers, so it wouldn't touch this committee unless you had a particular interest and wanted to see it.
Yes, I noticed there's no timelines on these sheets, so it would be helpful to know when these contracts really actually come up. Presumably they're going to be on the council website anyway.
Yes, we can supply that, and there is more detail in the published procurement framework, that's procurement pipeline, get it right? That's on the website. This is a sort of more of an abbreviated version, but there is more detail available. We can supply that or supply the link to the committee with the minutes, so you can obviously look at that in that more detail after the committee. That's helpful.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just a quick one from me around sort of some of the timelines of the larger ones that the committee may want to look at in more detail and sort of in the future. Starting with sort of the digital customer and transformation ones around sort of the few that are £1 million or more, the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement and the replace user personal devices would just be a continuing spend, I assume, as and when devices are damaged or lost.
So just, again, we may come back on some of the questions, but just for high level, so the Microsoft licence, I think, is actually going to Cabinet on Tuesday next week. So that one is pretty much in progress. And the user devices is looking at really replacement devices. And what we do, obviously, we all have these. They've got a lifespan, like fixed lifespan. So we replace all of the user devices at a point in time when they become, they start breaking down, they're not fit for purpose, don't run software. So that will be looking at specification for new devices for members and for officers. That may be something you'll be interested in looking at what that looks like in the future.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would hope that that's quite a way in the future, because obviously these are pretty new devices, and fingers crossed they're all going to be working for quite a long time before we need that. But yeah, certainly. And then unless anybody has anything else to say on the digital one, I'll yeah, there's just a few ones on the environmental services. Obviously, there are some really big ones here around the parks and grounds maintenance. I know that there's been a working group that I myself was on last year, and that's continuing on now. But sort of, what's the timeline around that contract renewal?
Thank you, Chairman. So the Task and Finish groups had delivered an update to ONS last night. We've met twice. We've got 2 more meetings to come. The third one is on the 16th of September. Last night, the update was that the final report from the Task and Finish group will be delivered to the next ONS committee at the end of October, I believe. The contract ends March 26. There are options to extend within that, but obviously we would need a decision to be made on future direction, ideally sooner rather than later, so we can get that on the pipeline and decide on the right course of action for that, whether that is the one of the 3 models that were previously considered, or something different which the Task and Finish group may wish to recommend.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I imagine that area of grounds maintenance will be something that goes to another committee rather than ours, as it's based on sort of a service that the council provides rather than primarily financial. And then the others, sort of the waste related services, like the fleet provision and clinical waste collections and things like that. I imagine that will all sort of wait until the consultation's finished before we make any sort of final decisions on that.
Thank you, Chairman. So there is a current live consultation on waste and recycling services, which closes at the end of September. Once that's closed, there will be a report brought back to Cabinet to detail the findings of that consultation and to outline the future options for a decision to be made on that at a future Cabinet meeting.
Okay, thank you. So the figures for those contract values may change depending on the outcome of that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on the environmental services one? No. Okay, moving on. On page 24, the finance and government is all largely sort of insurance based and sort of things that the council need to pay. So I won't dwell too much on that one. But the agency staff provisions on legal and democratic services, obviously that's a very large amount. Is that due to the council requiring more agency staff in general, or is that just sort of a par for the course amount that we've always paid?
So that reflects obviously an estimate over the life of the contract. So it's not like an annual spend. So we look at a 5-year spend, and that's reflective of current usage. A lot of that is like day-to-day agency requirements. So, for example, James has a stock of agency staff he uses for refuse collection and a lot of frontline services. So it just reflects our current usage. And obviously, what we're always doing is trying to minimise the use of that where appropriate. But sometimes, obviously, it's essential for business continuity and delivery reasons.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and what's the timeline for this particular contract? So maybe something that this committee would want to look into, sort of the general use of agency staff and how much that's costing the council in general. No worries. Bear with us a second.
Chair, if you've got any other queries, you could perhaps pick them up whilst Claire's looking rather
Yeah,
than, otherwise it's a bit pressure as well, Claire.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just looking through, and the other members, please shout if you have anything. Nether Main Ambulance Hub on page 25 is something that I believe it was council signed off on that, or it may have been a committee, but I remember that being signed off. So no queries on that one. Obviously, the very large one, which is probably valued more than all the other items on the agenda put together, is the strategic asset management of council housing stock and corporate buildings, which in layman's terms is the Morgan Sindall contract on page 26. An estimated amount of £107.4 million, and so yeah, that's obviously something that all members on the council, all 42 members, will know this contract fairly well, as we all have housing issues in our wards that we deal with on a daily and weekly basis. But what's the timeline for that particular one, and are we expecting that to be sort of a figure that goes up in the future, rather than staying the same or going down?
So there's extension provisions that I think come up in March 26. So there'll be an options paper given to Cabinet and wider members to consider around what options they want to pursue, and obviously then how we take that forward. So the contract doesn't end in March 26, but there's an extension provision at that point. So members consider options and then how we want to take it forward, how we want to address it.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I've got the information.
Yes, please.
Apologies. We have an extension option under that contract that's the 1st of the 9th, 2024. So that would have been going through the system at the moment, but that would only be for a 2-year period.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful. That may be something that this committee may want to look at sort of later in the year or early next year to sort of be in time for that 2-year extension to be completed. And then the other big issues around the property assets and development section. Obviously, we've got the electricity and gas supplies, which are both more than $1 million. It's an area that I know fairly well. I used to work for an energy supplier, so I'm used to seeing energy bills going up and up and up. So is that something that we're expecting to grow before the end of the contract, or are those figures sort of expected to be around what we think it will be?
So a lot of that, again, like households, we are obviously beholden to the energy markets. So that's looking at current assumptions, but obviously that could change dramatically from month to month. But we're expecting that at the moment based on current usage, but we monitor that quite regularly with our current procurement processes. But it could change quite a lot depending on how the market goes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Webb?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On that subject, on page 26, I just wanted some clarification as to why there was 2 headings under supply of electricity for 100 kilowatt and unmetered supply.
Yeah. Yes. There's one sort of about a third of the way down the page for 2.66 million, and then a second one about just over halfway down the page for 230,000.
Apologies. So part of this process of when we put the pipeline together, we'll go through the contracts register, which is all the contracts that we've currently got in place, and understanding when their contract end dates are, so we know that when we need to renew them. But in addition to that, we'll have the meetings with assistant directors to ensure that they're on top of what contracts are coming up, so any new requirements. So this may have been brought up at both meetings, and hence the duplication. It won't be me that we're going to be procuring it twice, it's just something that's been duplicated as part of the process.
Okay, thank you. So do we expect the estimated contract value of that to be those two added together, or sort of one or the other?
It would be one or the other, and I'd have to get back to you on which one that is likely to be.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. If you could get back to us on that one, because obviously one of the figures is 10 times greater than the other, so it would be useful to know which one. I suspect it will be the 2.6 million rather than the 230,000. But yeah, some clarity on that in the minutes would be useful. Thank you. Does anybody else have any queries on this item? No, we're flying through tonight. Okay, yeah, that report was just for noting, as was the previous report. Sorry, I didn't. I forgot to mention that at the end of that report. So yeah, both of those are for noting. Thank you, members. So we'll move on to item 5, which is the draft work programme. Now I will just quickly say for this one, obviously that the next two meetings have quite a few heavy agenda items on them. Particularly the 12th of November is covering the draft service budgets for general fund and the medium term financial strategy, which I've sat on scrutiny meetings for that over in the past, and that's quite a hefty amount. I also know that the overview and scrutiny are looking at that as well in terms of sort of a general view. So I'll be keen for this committee to primarily look at the basically just look at the numbers for that one and make sure that everything's adding up as it should be, rather than going into the policy detail of what is found in each item on the budget. And then there's also an item for the 12th of November on large investments for the council. That's obviously a very broad item, and so I'll be keen to hear members sort of which large investments that the council are either currently making or have made in the past sort of 12 months that you would like to hear from on that agenda item. If anybody has any comments. No. Okay, yeah, I mean the big things that I would like to sort of get my teeth into for that one really are obviously around the waste, which is an issue that's been going on for almost 12 months now, sort of how we got into the situation of the 1.2 million overspend in the first place, and then also sort of the financial costs of the consultation that's currently ongoing, and by 12th of November hopefully we'll have some outcomes of that consultation and an idea of how much continuing spend will be on making any changes that the consultation suggests.
Yeah, Councillor, I believe that we will have we'll be, after the consultation closes, we believe we're taking an item to Cabinet at the beginning of November. It's 11th of November, isn't it? So it's around the same time. So there will be a decision made at that point whether there's opportunity to scrutinise it through this commission prior to the decision being made or not. I'm not sure of the timings of that, but if it's either way, there's the opportunity to we can have a look through that at that point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, maybe a quick turnaround if it was coming to Cabinet the night before here, but it may be something that we look at for the and add to the 25th of February, of sort of looking back on how it went rather than looking ahead to how it's going to go, and then other investments that have happened sort of the last 12 months. The View Cinema is a big one that has been quite contentious over the previous months and years around sort of initially Empire taking it on and then the council having to spend money on keeping the building going until View were able to take over. So I think by 12th of November as well, it would be good to have an idea of how successful View have been in their opening few months, and sort of how the whole area of East Square is shaping up now that we have a cinema finally in the property, and just see how much of a financial success it's been in getting up and running, and obviously whether it's been worth the large amounts of money that the council's been spending to keep it open and keep it going. Are there any other comments on the large investments? No. Obviously, but us as members can, if you do have any others that you'd like to to raise, please do send them over to me before the meeting on the 12th of November, so we can look to get them added. And then the 25th of February meeting, there's we've got another item on large investments. So if there is anything that doesn't quite make it to the 12th of November, we can add it further on. And then financial interventions from for councils. So this was something that I wanted to include on the agenda for this year. Basically, looking at how some of our neighbouring councils are shaping up financially, and if there's anything that we can learn, either positive or negative, from those councils. Obviously, the largest sort of financial intervention that there's been in South Essex recently is of course Thurrock, and I would like to particularly look at how Thurrock are handling the recovery, and also sort of how Basildon can avoid any situation like that in the future, and then also sort of looking at how other councils in the area handle specific services. For example, the merger that Brentwood and yes, Mr. Sparks.
I just thought that there may be some merit in looking at some of the wider issues outside the area as well, because some of those lessons may be pertinent to us as well, so that might add another dimension, some more value to that report. That would be helpful, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've just been looking at the procurement pipeline, perhaps have a look at how other councils are procuring as well, to see if we're getting the best value for money from our services that is possible in the current financial climate. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that item in particular. Is there anything else that members would like to add? No, nobody's indicating. So yeah, that's everything. As I say, if there are any other items on the draft work programme that members would like added, please do get in touch with me ahead of the next meeting, so that we can discuss putting that on. But no, thank you very much for attending this evening. Those who were able to make it. Thank you.